Sorry about that. Man, I wish. We might be able to do that. So hopefully I got YouTube back up over here. It messed up on my iPad. See, that's why I like Android stuff on my iPad. So now let's get through some of this kind of stuff. And let me get through this. And if we have time, I will bring Andre on here. But I don't know how it's going to work on that thing. But we'll see. So what I was saying at the last point was that how Kaufman's idea of it not being monotheistic, that it was a brand new type of monotheism, that it was monotheism by itself in a vacuum, something fresh, brand new, is not actually accurate. That it wasn't something brand new, that it was something that came from a Hermetic idea. And, oh, you're at the gym, you can't do that anyway. But it was a Hermetic idea that was repackaged and added in with some of the older teachings of the Sumerians and everybody else. So, and the Canaanites and all those people. So let's look at this other part. The next thing that made a difference in this story, and the reason why it started becoming appealing, because it created this supreme deity that was far and above every other type of god at the time, right? And that's because it didn't have a theogony. You see, there was no theogony with the Hebraic God. Now, some of you may say, what the hell is a theogony? Well, theogony is a life story of the god, an origin story of the god. You know, I like the Marvel movies and the DC movies, so some of the DC movies. But they have a life story. They have an origin story, how they got their powers and how they became who they are. You know, when you look at Zeus was born, and then his mother hid him and gave the father a rock, and the father ate the rock, and then later on Zeus grows up, and with the help of his brother Neptune and Hades, they kill their father and become the deities of the earth and everything of man, of the universe, you know, and split up. Zeus gets the heavens, Neptune gets Neptune or Poseidon. Poseidon gets the oceans, and Hades gets the underworld. So they have this beginning story, and then gods can die. They have lives, they have sex, so they have all these things. So they are very humanized, but they're very limited. The writers of the J text, who, when you read the story of Genesis, the first creation, verse 1 through like 26. How you doing, Jacob? Verse 1 through 26 of the Genesis story, that's written by the Judas text, by the people of Judea, of the tribes of Judah, the northern kingdom. They are they wrote about a God who just created. There's no beginning story. It's just in the beginning, you know, and God was just there. Not held by time. You see, when your God is born, right? Good, glad to hear that. When your God is born, your God is controlled by time. So what they created was a God that wasn't controlled by time, an infinite God. Which, if you go back and you look at the Hermetic teachings, you read the Immortalis, you understand that the all in all is not bent on time either. It doesn't have a time stamp on it. So I'm convinced that these writers came out of the schools of Akhenaten, and they knew these stories. They knew the idea of the Hermetic laws, the Hermetic understanding of the all, the Kabbalah, if you will. In today's time, I just read the Kabbalah because it demystifies the Hermetics. But they didn't have a theogony. So when this God doesn't have a theogony, of course, now the Romans, when they're hearing about this new God of these Israelite Hebrew people, what they're hearing about is this God who just always have been, always was, and always is, right? And since this God always was and always is, and has no beginning, no end, then of course it is above and beyond their Jupiter. You know, even though their God was called Jupiter Maximus, it's a middle name there too. I forgot what the middle name was, right? It has this whole thing. Yah, the and Adonai are all related. Yes, they are all related. And we're going to get to that because, like I think, we're sticking right with the Genesis, with the first story, because when I said in the very beginning is that later on, this first psychology of a no time, a God that doesn't have any bearing of time, gets changed as other writers write about it, gets converted into a more relatable God. Yeah, Jupiter Optimus Maximus. Yeah, I don't know why. Optimus Prime. I should have remembered that. But he gets converted. And if you really read the Hebrew Bible, you'll see this guy go from Genesis chapter 1 to a omnipresent, omnipotent, God out of time, very hermetic type of God, to becoming this more of an Octane, more of a Yah, more of an Adonai, more of a Baal, more of Jupiter, more of Zeus, more of the Orishas of Shango, more of that kind of God. Like he really becomes Shango, thunder and lightning God, really becomes Baal, the landing on the top of the mountain with smoke and all that kind of stuff, and fire, having to have a tent that he dwells in, and all those kind of things. It's really a lot of that. In a minute, Jacob, because you will definitely throw me off of my script here. If y'all don't know, if y'all don't listen, if y'all don't, Jacob Berman, he's on my Facebook feed. Check out this young man's information, his videos. He's very intelligent, has a lot of history, and a lot of connections. Good, deep thinking. All right. So their guy had a theogony. This new version does not have a theogony, right? And that is a different thing. That's not something the Canaanites and the Sumerians and all these people were used to. They were used to, El and all these people who were born, they live, they die, they have sex, they eat, they do all these things. That's why in the Genesis story, it just, he created things and it was good. Which brings me to point number 3, which was a different thing. In all of the other ancient religions, there was always this idea that there are good gods and there are evil gods. There are these two warring factions. There's these two realms of understanding, these two ideologies of thought and places of dwelling. There's the heavenly realm and the hell, the realm of hell, right? The demonic realm. And all of these things were created in the beginning from the primordial ooze of creation, whatever it was, the waters, they were created from that beginning state. But so evil is present just as much as there is good, and they war against each other. Now, we know that if you've read the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible, that becomes part of their story. You see, that's why I'm saying you have to, when you look at the whole thing, it becomes part of their story. But in the very beginning, when the Judas text, the J text was written, it wasn't part of the story. He made the sun and the moon and said it was good. He made the animals and said it was good. He made humans and said it was good. And if you think about a little bit deeper, he made humans and said you have from every tree, every tree is good for fruit, right? And he told the animals you have every herb and plant, grass, rather. You have every grass to eat with fruit. And he gave, so the man had one type of food, whereas the animals had another type of food. That was set up so that the way that's described, there's no competition for food. Man don't hunt animals, animals don't hunt man. Man's not fighting the animals for grass because we're not eating grass, but the animals not eating the fruit from the trees either. So it was set up in such a way to make it like fair. There was no evil intent. There was no negativity. There was none of that. Not in the way that the mythologies of the day would have it. Like there's Zeus, but then there's Hades, right? There's Osiris, and then there's Set. There's always a negative component to what's supposed to be the good component. But in this version, they created a God that's all good, that doesn't have any negativity about it, right? So that was a difference, and that changed the way people thought. They thought about a perfectly good God, right? And that's a winning story. That's a good sales pitch, that the God that watches over you is a good God. Not one that is good today, but then can get irritated by you later. When you read the Atrahasis, right? The Enuma Elish, sorry. When you read the Enuma Elish, the Sumerian story in the Enuma Elish, it talks about how like the gods got irritated, by all the noise that was being going on. They couldn't sleep because there was so much noise and the man was so loud. Wanted them all to die, You know, Inky Enlil wanted all of man to die. He was irritated by man. You know, you didn't have this with this Genesis version, this first part of Genesis version that was created, but you do get it later on. Later on, you get a God when he becomes El. When he becomes El, now he's irritated and he got to flood everybody out. Now, and even when he becomes Yah, he's mad and he got to give him rules. He's mad and he got to kill 3,000 people because they built a path. You know, later on, this God becomes irritated. So that's why I say their God progressed into becoming just like the previous versions that these original writers tried to escape from and tried to give their people something different. But that story was long lasting because that first part gave them something different, right? And in this version, evil doesn't come about because of a devil. If you ever really look at the Jewish people, they don't have a devil. They don't have a hell. You live, you die. That's it, right? That's it. You live, you die. They don't have a hell. There's no devil. The serpent wasn't the devil. The serpent just presented a choice. That's it. Man had free will, and the serpent presented a choice. In the story of Job, the adversary is not a devil. He's just like a prosecutor. Hey, think about it. If the devil lost in a battle in heaven and was put in prison on earth, why are he going back and forth to heaven? That's not the devil. That wouldn't be a devil. This is a later creation. This is a later doctrine that was created in Christianity about a devil. So there is no devil because there is no evil that is automatically created. It's just choice. The evil in the world, as far as man, the God is concerned, which this is a very hermetic thought process, right? I need to be Jewish, no reincarnation. Yep. The reason you may be okay, so but there's no devil, and but the reason there is evil is because man has free will. Pandora's box was opened by free will. The apple or pomegranate or whatever the fruit was consumed for free will. Man had a choice. Evil is on the world because man has choices to choose one or the other. And let me give you one part of Genesis why that is definitely the thought process of the writers of that day. And one, let me go ahead and say, and nowhere in the Hebrew Bible does it say that it was written by God. This is definitely written by man. They knew they was writing by man. It was written by man to tell you of how the psychology was of a culture of that day, not a book of divinity. But when Cain kills Abel, there's a part that many people miss. When Abel gives his sacrifice, and makes his sacrifice, and then Cain brings his offering, and Cain's all brutish and he pissed off about it. The God, their God, El, Baal, whatever you want to call him, says, look at him. And I'm paraphrasing. But no, actually he says that because of his anger, that sin is at his doorstep. But he has the ability to master it, to be a master over sin. Now, I want you to think about that. The doctrine of Christianity teaches you that no one can master sin. But yet here's God telling Cain that you can be the master over sin. There's no Jesus yet. Cain doesn't pray to God, doesn't ask God for anything, doesn't have rituals to God. I mean, this sacrifice is the first time a ritual is going on, other than people say it's a ritual when you kill the animal to cover Adam and Eve. But there's no ritual. There's no going to church on Sunday. There's none of that going on. But what do we have? We still got this story. We got God, the God of this Hebrew Bible telling Cain that you can be a master over sin. So is it contradictory later on when the story changes and no man can master sin? Was he lying to Cain? Was he playing tricks and games on Cain? So, but that tells you that the people of that day, the God they were creating, had a mindset of morality, of you master your morality, right? We're going to get into that in a few seconds. But before we go there, I want to just break in the fact that because there were no rituals, there was no magic. The reason why there were no magic is because this was the first time. See, even when the Octane was created, there was still Egyptian magic that could affect nature, right? Because all religions came from the observation of life. And that observation of life incorporated nature. And when they wanted to explain rain, they gave it a deity. They knew that a supreme deity created it. A supreme deity put the science in place for it to happen. But what they also added at that point was that when they added that deity, they just saying that, like in the Hindu teachings, each god represent a piece of nature or a characteristic of man, so that you can understand how the creator is. When you look at Ifa, each Orisha represents a part of nature or characteristics of man to explain how the creator is, right? Not that you worship each one. Your ancestors are deified to represent certain aspects of being, of life, right? Of life bigger than you, bigger than what your mind can consume. So this is why in Ifa you edify your ancestors. In the Hindu, you go into the Akashic record. You know, we talk about in science, you carry the DNA of all your ancestors. So it was bringing all that together, but it was controlled by nature. So these gods were they had a limitation of nature. And what the Hebraic did was they created a God that wasn't limited by nature, that steps outside of nature and actually just puts nature in there, but it's always outside. So that everything is the will of the God, not because you did an animal sacrifice, you forced God to do something. Not you may ask, you may pray, but it's still the will of God. The fire burned down the 12 other 20 or however many other, I think Isaiah burned down all those other people who couldn't rain. Their God wouldn't rain down no fire, but he rains down fire. You know, it was the will of God. Now, he asked God for it, and it's just his will. And the way they wrote it is that their meaning is it was done to show a historical reference point of what the people were going through and dealing with at that time. So they separated miracles from witchcraft. They separate the will of God and you praying and God just saying, okay, I'll do it for you this time. But all those things was God's doing of God's own free will, not because you did something to call God for it. If you look at some of the Druid and Celtic magical rituals, their thought, Elijah, thank you. Their thought process is, if I do this ritual, it's going to force this God to appear, or this deity to appear, this entity, this demon to appear. Or even when you look at the Catholic, once they, that's how you know they migrated back into the polytheistic idea. They want to exorcise this demon. They got crosses and holy water and all these things to exorcise a demon out of somebody, because they now have control and power over the demon. And they'll say, you know, in Jesus' name, I command you, all that. But they're still using a sacrifice, a blood sacrifice of a man on a stick to have dominion over a demonic realm entity, right? So they're still incorporating magic and powers of nature over it. Now, are there things in nature that we can use to heal ourselves? Is there vibration? Is there frequency? Yes, there's all those things. Those things are within nature. But even though the Hermetic view talks about that, the Hermetic view still has an all above all, and all in all. You know, the all, the creator that is outside of that you can affect it. Like, it's like the all is on the penthouse floor and there's only one elevator and you can't get on it because you ain't got a key card, right? But in the other mythologies, you have a key card to be able to force any of these deities to do whatever. Which brings me back to morality. The morality of the previous ancient religions was the fact that these gods faced moral choices and moral dilemmas, whereas this God of the Hebrew didn't face those things. It just made things and said it was good. It did everything, said it's good. All immorality came from man having free will to choose. And when you look at the story, it is as if this God has its issues. And this is one of his issues. It's supposed to be omnipresent, all known, right? But yet it creates man with free will, but constantly has to adjust its plan because man's free will keeps upsetting the balance that it created. There was a balance that man was supposed to be a vegetarian, and all the animals were supposed to be vegetarian. But then man's free will of murder and things like, well, eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and then murder and all this other kind of stuff. Now man is a carnivore, animals are carnivores. Now animals and man are fighting over food and resources. So upset the balance. What I got to do now? God has to change the plan and flood everybody out. All right, well, flooded everybody out, but then man starts doing a whole bunch of other stuff. Now what he got to do? Got to send some judges. Now what he got to do? Got to send some kings. Now what he got to do? Got to send you into exile, send you into captivity. Now, always having to adjust this plan, this perfect plan. So it's still limited. This guy becomes a God with morality issues, and this guy gets angry, gets jealous, gets all these different things. So he migrated into the same kind of God that the other ones had. But the biggest difference in the morality thing is that this guy originally thought man should just have his own morality. Man would just automatically know. If you think about it, no rules were given to man until you get to, Exodus, I believe. Yeah, the Exodus stories, when you start getting some rules of how to live, Leviticus, how to eat. You don't get into any rules until later. So all these other generations of men were just supposed to make the moral, ethical choice. That was this guy's expectation. So this guy was more about morality. It wasn't about salvation. That's why there's no hell. That's why in the whole first part in the whole Hebraic Bible, there's no hell. I used to ask that question all the time when I was a kid. There's no hell in all of the first part of the Bible, of the Christian Bible. It's not until later that there's a hell, which is an adaptation from the Egyptians, the Canaanites, and the Greek. So I was like, where does this hell come from? And that's where they came. That's where they get their ideas of it. But beforehand, there's none of that. There's no hell, right? So it wasn't about salvation because there was nothing to save you from. The only thing you need to be saved from was your own morality. Your own morality. That's why he told Cain, sin is at your doorstep and you can master it. You have the ability to master it. That's a Hermetic thought process. If you can master the Hermetic laws, there is no sin in your life. The law of vibration, the law of mental, the law of correspondence, the law of rhythm, the law of polarity, the law of gender. You master those laws, there is no sin in your life because you are always going to be vibrating at a higher, pure level of thought and consciousness. So your actions will follow. There is no sin when you master the Hermetic law. Essentially what God was telling Cain. Yeah, telling Cain. Master your Hermetics, master your emotions, master your thoughts, master your actions, master your vibration, and you won't have to worry about sin. Don't be jealous of your brother. Don't look enviously. Don't be angry. Master all that you are, and you will be a master over sin. That's in their Hebraic Bible. But people don't get that. They skip that little part because they're already convinced of the other side of the more mythological thought process. The Greeks and Romans and Druids and Egyptians and everybody else had to go and pay homage to the God and ask for forgiveness for sins and beg and plead and offer sacrifices for the rain and all that kind of stuff. They're creating a God that you don't have to do all that stuff. Then later on you do, but at that moment you didn't. So there was no salvation. Plus, there was another different morality. All the other previous ancient religions taught that man was basically servants of God. That man were the servants of the gods. That man were here to work for the gods. That the gods really didn't like man or cared a lot for man. But in this version, the first part in Genesis, you have a God that cares about man. Hey, be fruitful and multiply, have dominion over the earth. Hey, I'm gonna give you all these fruit trees and nuts and berries to eat from. I got you. I'm not gonna let any of the animals. I'm gonna make all the animals eat grass because I don't want nothing attacking you. Oh, you messed up. I'm gonna put some clothes on you. You had this guy that was always caring about man and never asking man to do anything for it. If you think about it, man doesn't start calling upon the name of the Lord, as it says, until you get to the birth of Seth and Seth's generations. Before that, nobody was praying. Nobody was going to Sunday school. Nobody going to church. Nobody doing any of those kind of things. That wasn't part of the plan. It was all about man. God was taking care of man, right? So the morality was different. You had a God that cared about man, which made the people feel a lot better. They like this God. This God is on my team. This God cares more about me. Because at the end of the day, what can you provide a supreme deity that it doesn't? If the supreme deity needs you to provide anything for it, it ain't supreme. It's just not. It's not supreme at all. So all of this is based off of a conversation that I had with a young man last week, well, a week and a half ago, actually. But as you see in there, and guys, there's oh my God, there's so many other things you can talk about, so much more that goes on. You know, when you look at these different texts, but this is why you got different. You got the J text, you got the E text. In the J text, this God is not anthropomorphized, but then it's the E text where it becomes anthropomorphized. Right? He needs a weekly barbecue. Yeah. And when he becomes anthropomorphized, that's when it's all of a sudden, you know, he walking in the cool of the day. That's E text, right? Of the second creation. You know, J text creation, God is just, he's a wind that flutters. But let me tell you, oh, speaking of wind that flutters, that's how you know they incorporated and they knew of the other stories. Because when Marduk killed Tiamat, the way he killed Tiamat was he released his winds. That's what the Atrahasis, the Enuma Elish says, that he released his winds into the ears of Tiamat, and that's how he destroyed and killed Tiamat. And from the body of Tiamat, he created the firmament. And if you actually look at a true translation of the Hebraic Bible in Genesis, it doesn't say, it says God breath, the wind of God. The Ruach is the wind of God. It's more of a flattering wind, a flapping wind. But the Ruach is a wind of God, not a spirit of God. That's a mistranslation that a lot of people go for, but it's the wind, right? So both are using this wind to bring up the firmament. One just killed Tiamat, the dragon lady, and create the firmament. The other one just the wind. But it's very simple. Water is above water. The stories are so simple that you would have to be purposely trying hard to keep them separate. All right, keep them separate. Okay, we're gonna try this. I hope Jacob can see it. I think I gotta take this microphone out. But here we go. Let's see if this works, Jacob, on Facebook. Bring Jacob. All right. I've done this one time on Facebook. I'm gonna see if it works.
Hello.
What's up, Jacob? How you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, and I'm pretty sure they can hear you on YouTube as well.
All right.
I see you growing a beard there.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing I said something that you wanted to add.
So I just noticed you were talking about the Enuma Elish, and I like to bring up that when I compare the story of the Enuma Elish to Satan's rebellion against God,
Right.
I noticed Satan's going against God. I think the story of the Enuma Elish actually is similar to Satan's rebellion against God. Because Kingu and Tiamat are fighting to try to overthrow Ea. And Ea, the other God, asked Marduk to help them out. And then Marduk says, okay, if you make me king of the gods, make me supreme, I'll help you out. And he does. Now, the thing about this is if you actually read the Anatolian story, the Song of Olokuma, the guy called Tessar does the same thing. He asks Hyatt to help him out, and he does. And he has a special, kind of like a special knife that cuts the feet of Olokuma that causes him to fall down. And then Tessar strikes him down, killing Olokuma, and it causes him war and overthrow him.
Right.
And then I noticed how Marduk, to me, sounds a lot like Michael.
Right.
And like Enoch, from which the book of Revelation gets the account of things rebellion from. Michael defeats Samyaza, also called Samyaza, and for God in the very same manner. And also, another thing that I've noticed is that if you look at the Egyptian god Aten, it sounds a lot like the Sumerian god Aten. That's the storm god. He was the son of Delmon. In fact, if you look it up, Adad and the Anatolian god Tethno actually have the same uniform.
Right.
They were identical to the same god. They have the same uniform symbols. Adad and Tethno.
No, and you're right.
You're right.
And that's the thing. A lot of these Near East gods are very similar. Because even Baal, he's a thunder god as well. Right? And then he takes over from his parents. And in Ifa, you got Shango. He's a thunder god. Right? And he has to fight a war. You know, so you got these similarities throughout all these stories. So we know that they all were borrowing from each other, which is why this book, the Hebraic story, has that borrowing effect as well.
Yeah. And the funny thing about that is that there's another guy called Baal Hadad, and he was a made Canaanite god, but he was not part of that Baal himself. Himself, he became super god.
You got some background noise going?
What was that?
There was a lot of background noise on that part, so I couldn't hear you. Okay. So what would you say again?
I'm sorry to hear the noise too, actually. So I think it has to be connection. So anyway, I was bringing up a god called Baal Hadad. He was the favorite Canaanite god, but he did not become as popular until he was better by Baal. So what's interesting is that this is all from Hadad to Baal Hadad. Now this people that Hadad sounded a lot like the Hebrew word shah, which is but the meaning of this eye sound at Hadad.
Right. It's really bad, and we could barely hear that part. It is a bad connection.
I don't know why that. I don't know what's talking about.
Yeah, I don't either. But I appreciate you, because what you were saying is great. Now, do me a favor and type some of that in. The last part you just said.
Okay.
Andre is saying if you put headphones on, I'm not sure if that'll make it. It'll cancel out the sound. I don't know if you guys on YouTube was able to hear what he's saying. But yeah, when you study a lot of these ancient stories, as Jacob is explaining, you get a lot of similarities. And then when you study the language, then within the language, you find a lot of these same wording used to describe these same gods. You want to go ahead and try now?
I think the noise is gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
This works.
All right, Andre. Andre might know something. Now go. What was that last thing you were saying again?
All right. So basically, I'm trying to show a common origin for Adonai and El Shaddai. Being actually based on the same God. Right. Because if you take a look at the Adam, the Hebrew word Adam is very similar to the Canaanite word Adam, and the Egyptian god Aten. Aten parallels Adon, the Sumerian god, and sound. Now, the Adad is a storm god, but at times, you can look this up too, he was often conflated with Shamash, the different sun god. So you can see how that kind of made its way through metamorphosis into becoming Aten, the sun is.
Right.
And speaking of Shamash, he was said to rise from the east in a chariot, kind of like Ra rising on the solar boat. He would go into the underworld at night, and then come out in the morning. And he also had an opposite called Nurgle. He was the god of death.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also referred to as Paul Enlil, which means the son of Enlil. Now, Paul could not help but wonder that sounds too much like the Egyptian god Abraham. In Greek, that thing Apollos.
Right.
Which is Ra's opposite, because he represents the nighttime darkness. Now, going back to what I was saying earlier, El Shaddai, between the S and the I sound, you cancel those two out, you get Had. That's the god. That's Hada, the god of Ephraim. One of the gods of Ephraim. That's also similar to the Canaanite god Hada. Now, Hada sounds a lot like Ada, which is another linguistic form of Ada. If you take another look at its form, it's also called Aden, which is similar to how Hadad is usually pronounced in the Canaanite language, Had. It's also similar to Shad, the Akkadian word for mountain.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is, if you take Shadu and you take Hadad together, you merge it into the same word, you pretty much get the Hebrew word Shad.
Mm-hmm. And
if it's an Adonai, has the same connection with Ada and Aten, he's also Ada as well.
Right.
And if you put all of this together, you look at the Nihilus, that's where they throw in Michael into the book of Enoch, and that's why he has the same enemies as the Sumerian storm god Ada.
Right. And that's what I was saying earlier throughout, how they, when you first look at these, what becomes the Hebrew people, they came out, they came from a background of the Canaanite people. They left the Canaanites. Right. Which they also had influences from the Egyptians. They were under the Egyptians. They were under the Sumerians. So they had, by the time they start putting their stories together, they already know all these other stories and they already know these other names. And they just converted them into something for themselves so that the people, they will have their familiarity, but then they try to separate themselves, but it's still all the same thing, the same stories, and the names are similar. And the thing about it is that the writers of that day, I don't think they cared or thought of people 2,000 years from now will look at this and say, well, it's separate, or well, look, they copied this or they copied that or anything like that, because they were just focused on their little tribe of people trying to establish something for themselves. I think what we should be able to take from that is to see that there is a common thought process, throughout. And what we should be doing really is burrowing down that these common thought processes were observation of life and them trying to understand life. And that's what we should be trying to understand life as well. Now, we don't go as far as creating a religious system that entraps people. But we look at it and say, well, I understand how cause and effect work. Now, before, they gave it a deity. I don't have to give it a deity. I just understand cause and effect. And I understand how that changes how I exist in the current form. Let me use that instead of sitting here praying and hoping the deity changes things. I can change these things myself, which is, I do agree that how the first writers in the Judas text puts their God character as somebody who's saying you have the moral ability to be as upright as you choose, to be as grand as you choose, to have as much dominion as you choose, right? But then of course it gets lost with bow down, worship, spin around 3 times and toss paper over your shoulder with all these different kind of rituals that should only be there to reinforce the idea of you have the ability to control your universe, and I love your information. You have a wide berth of information, of connections. I love the fact that how much you study. I've watched you over the last year or so, and I'm very impressed with your study, to say the least.
I like to say the same thing for you. You've done a lot yourself. I notice how you do you get into the spiritual thing more than I just talk about just the history part of it. I'm not too much of a big into spiritual stuff. However, what I noticed is that how much the Jewish God is actually based on an interpersonal God of war that they developed, that they stole, that was previously a son of El, the original supreme God mentioned in Israel. Because of these two verses that I bring up a lot is Deuteronomy chapter 32 verses 8 and 9, which the Lord is inheriting Israel from another God called El Elyon. It can also be pronounced El. Now, when I was comparing, I was trying to see like, okay, who is Elyon? I was asking this question, like at the beginning of my research. Then I was going through the Sumerian pantheon. I noticed that people had different opinions of who God was. Now, some people actually think God of the Bible is like Marduk or something like that. But what I noticed is that during the plagiarism that was going on, the Israelites kind of canceled out which God they were plagiarizing in a sense. And one example of canceling out is in Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 2, which Marduk in Hebrew is called Hermetic, is declared to be a false god. So, like, I suppose they could take a little bit from him, but they certainly were not concentrating on him to be their God. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make.
Right. But isn't it in Deuteronomy or somewhere around in Deuteronomy, or maybe it's in Exodus where it said, "No longer will you call me Baal, but you will now call me."
Hosea chapter 2 verse 16.
Okay.
It says, as a matter of fact, this is very interesting. God says, "You will no longer call me Baali, my master, but you will call me Ishi, my husband."
Right.
Now, Ishi is also in the Hebrew called Yishi. To me, sounds way too much like the Sumerian god Ishtar.
Right, Ishtar.
Ishtar is the earlier form of Adad.
Right.
Now, if you go look at the Sanskrit text, there's a god just like him called Ishvara. He is a monotheistic god, just like the Jewish god. And his name sounds almost just like Ishtar. So it's like, I like to say that God has a real bad habit of turning into a monotheistic.
Oh, very much so. And it keeps changing. That's why I was saying in the very first part, I don't know if you had caught it, that the Hebrew Bible is really the psychology and of the culture at different time frames in history. Right? That around 1000, you got the tribes of Judah, the northern tribes with the J text, and then later on here comes the Eloists with the the E text, and then later on is the D text, and then the P text with the priesthood, and there's huge gaps of time when these things are being written, and of course they went through Babylonian captivity and all these other kinds of issues, and so they're writing from a different perspective, and they're changing and fitting. Whether it's El, Elohim, Yahweh, Jehovah, El Shaddai, the Tetragrammaton, no matter how they want to do it, whatever they want to call them, they're switching it all up to match their current culture, their current dilemma, their current life, right? So that's why I tell it, it's definitely not a book of history. It's more of a book of psychology of a people telling their story throughout their history. Right, and relating it in a way that it wasn't even really religious for them at first, right? It wasn't even religious. It was like just a way of living, a culture. You see what Chase? Can you see the comments?
Yeah, I can.
You see what Chase is saying? Was the Hebrew Bible written before the Christian Bible? Go ahead, there, Jacob. handle that.
Oh, absolutely. Before the Christian life.
Right. Definitely written before the Christian Bible. Even if you took it from the time frame of when the Septuagint was put together, around was that 331 BCE?
It's more like the 3rd century.
Right.
The Ptolemy second built up his father's place. It's Pharaoh in Egypt.
Right. So you're still looking at the before the Common Era of it being put together in Greek. But even the I think the Dead Sea Scrolls were, even though they're not the same, you got some things that are similar, and there are variations within the current Pentateuch, Tanakh, and the and what's written in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And you got some books that's not there and books that are there. All of it, that conversation, the oral tradition, all of that was still going on. Even the written tradition was going on before the Christian Bible was written. Because you have to realize the Christian Bible, that's not put together. That's put together over a time frame from like 325 to right around like 1400 or 1300, somewhere around there. So you got like 700 years of time before the Christian Bible is even canonized.
Also, the Christians purposely altered. When they created the Christian what they later called the Old Testament, they changed what it says. Told everybody that's what the Hebrew said, but they would change some of the wording to make it look like Jesus was prophesied.
Right.
In the Hebrew text, they were referring to something when they were talking about something else, not anything like Jesus.
Right. Even they even changed the way that Lucifer is talked about. Because the one time the word Lucifer is used in the Hebraic Bible, it's talking about a king. It's not talking about a deity or a being or a demonic being. It's talking about a king, a human.
It's also more like you can tell it as astrology playing a role.
Right.
Lucifer's falling from the sky because he tried to make himself like the Most High, something like that.
Yeah, it's and that doesn't even give it that's not even the same entity as the adversary or the serpent or even the great dragon in Revelation. They're all still totally different ideas, not even put together. It's a doctrine that put them together. So but the simple answer to the question was, it was written the Hebraic Bible was written before the Christian. The Christian came much later, and then, like Jacob said, made a lot of changes to the Hebraic Bible, which if you compare them side to side today, you'll find differences.
You can look at you can compare the Septuagint to the Tanakh, or the Masoretic text, the Samaritan text, compare it to the Dead Sea Scrolls, and especially compare it to the Torah, which the Aramaic version of the Torah, and the text. There are a lot of differences. However, there are more similarities between the Septuagint, the Targum, and the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the Masoretic texts have more things in common than the other three have more in common with each other. Because in those texts, it was a little more, I guess I could put more hints of polytheism in those texts than there are in the later texts that have reaction. The Hebrew tribes did. Like, for example, if you look at the same two verses of Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 9 from the Dead Sea Scrolls of Deuteronomy and the Deuteronomy Septuagint, there are some differences.
Right.
Because in the Dead Sea Scroll it says sons of God, not children of Israel. And in the Septuagint, or in the Deuteronomy Septuagint, it says the angels of God. When it's talking about, I don't remember that person exactly what it says, but it says something like this, like when Hypsistos, that's the Greek word for Most High, basically divided the land of the earth. He essentially, it divided dividing according to the number of the angels of God. In Krios, which is the Lord, is inheriting Israel from Systems, who was previously his people,
right.
coming to purpose. Instead of sons of God, other way around. Instead of angels of God, it was replaced with sons of God.
Right.
And then later they replaced it with children of Israel to delete the pantheon from Deuteronomy.
Exactly.
So you would read the two verses and probably not even notice what's going on here, because everybody talks about God has no parents. But in Deuteronomy, he inherits Israel. He can't inherit unless he has parents. There's no really other meaning for inheritance.
Right. Exactly. Which that's why I was saying, like, if their God migrates into the pantheon of gods kind of situation. Here's another question that somebody wrote on, and this one's I didn't have it on, so I apologize, YouTube, for not having the chats on the way I can see them. But Vegan Trader said, I really appreciate your studies. I have a question. How could ancient Egyptian spirituality could have influenced Abrahamic religion if the hieroglyphs weren't translated until the 1800s? Okay. I want you to think about it like this, Vegan Trader. You're looking at that from a perspective of today, not looking at it from a perspective of 1000 BCE. 1000 BCE, the Egyptians were all over what we now call the Middle East and North Africa. Their contributions, their influence was all over that area. It would be the same way as if you live in America, it's not strange for you to speak Spanish and be able to go to Mexico and speak Spanish, or Americans being influenced by the Spanish culture because they're right next door to each other, living at the same time. So even though we may not have had the translations until the 1800s with Rosetta Stones, they at the time of living would have easily been bilingual, be able to read in the same way we do today with different cultures. So you have to look at that from their eyes, not from our eyes. And so that's how the Egyptian spirituality affects the Abrahamic, because when it was being written, the Egyptians were very prominent, and many other civilizations were very prominent at the time. The Hindu and the Buddhist cultures were very prominent, and they were trading. Well, Alexandria, Egypt was a major site of trade of not only material things, but also knowledge and wisdom. So they would have been coming in contact with each other often. Even the Essenes, where they were supposedly being at the time frame of the supposed birth of Jesus, that was a Roman rock quarry area to which way he was supposed to be born. So and there were people from the Indus Valley who was over there, as well as Egyptians and everybody else, because it was a great place to work. It was like going to DC or going to New York. Let's go there to work. So people came from everywhere to work. So you have a great trade. But you have to think about those people back then, they would have been in communication with each other. They would have spoken with each other. Even in the Hebraic story, you got Jacob, is Jacob, right? Who gets Joseph who gets sold into slavery by his brothers, and he ends up working for Potiphar and taking over, like one of the highest people in Egypt. They communicated with each other. You don't take over if you can't speak the language. So they all communicated with each other. So you have to think about it in how things were at that time, right? Hieroglyphs is
also speaking about Egypt, I suspect the reason why Egypt is so hated in Hebrew scriptures, why it became so hated, that's because if you look at how Akhenaten's reign came to an end,
right,
it wasn't to have the Egyptians were not happy with them, forcing them to worship the Aten and then tying all the other gods to false.
Right.
So you can see how because in Egypt at that time frame they had a lot of power over the Canaanites. Or at least they were in a lot of contact with the Canaanites. So their religion was transmitting down there. So basically, the worship of Aten went through their territory and migrated into what later became ancient Israel, because they had to go elsewhere. They realized, okay, we can't continue monotheism in Egypt. That failed. We're going to go try again somewhere.
Right.
Have better results. But they remember what the Egyptians did to them. They went out ready to forgive them. So they're going to make sure they're completely bad of that history. So they started essentially making some stuff up, saying that the Hebrews were slaves in Egypt, even though they were not. They were part of the Canaanites.
Yeah. Other than that book, there's no proof of that.
Right. If you compare the names of the Egyptian pharaohs to the Jewish characters, they actually sound a lot like Akhenaten and Moses. Sound a lot like Aaron and Moses.
Right.
The brothers Aaron and Moses. And Akhenaten, of course, he was the guy that took care of all the monotheism, and Moses was more of a nobody in comparison to him. He was just his brother, and that's pretty much it. And so they went down there and did it real and started all over. They did it there. But other than Aaron and Moses resembling Akhenaten and Moses, Akhenaten never let anybody out of Egypt, or neither did his brother Moses do anything like their biblical counterparts.
Right.
They added that in there.
The closest thing you get to that really is, and it's not even validated, and it's more legend, is that when Ptolemy was wanting to put the Septuagint together, that it was suggested to him that he release in the letter of 72 that he release a certain number of Hebrews, right? And that's not even a fact. That's just kind of a legend thing that's out there.
Yeah.
But that's the closest you get to an Exodus story. Which,
yeah, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and that was like so far down the line, historically, that was like you said earlier, in the 3rd century. So that wasn't even anywhere close to the timeline that the Exodus story talks about this.
Right, and then you actually look up what was the Septuagint, or which was called, Tata Toyos Evdon.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you have that.
Which was originally, as a matter of fact, the Septuagint was only 5 books long. It was the translation of the Torah, not even the entire scriptures. It was later called the Septuagint, which comes up, I think it's Latin, Septuaginta.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, is that the 2nd or the 1st century? So I think it was somewhere around there where it was given that name. And the Christians, they added in the rest of the books of the Septuagint. And then they added in the Apocrypha. But later, the Apocrypha became rejected. But the Hebrews, they were already rejected.
But then the Protestants rejected it. But the Catholics kept it. They just didn't keep it in the book. And they said it's just good for, I think, ecumenical store. It's good for priestly study or something like that they kept it.
Yeah.
But they didn't want, the Protestants wholly rejected it, but the Catholics it's still part of their reading, their study, the way they live their life.
Right.
Yeah.
And but the interesting thing is the earliest manuscripts of the text that we have of the Hebrew text is in Greek. So is the New Testament. I find that very interesting because when Alexander in the 4th century BCE he conquered Persia, Babylon, Egypt. At this point, the Hebrews would have access through the fact that Greece conquered all those people.
Right.
Well, they would have access to more than enough literature to actually build their own religion around it. Like the Enuma Elish, you get that's Michael's, and then it's the war between God and Samyaza. They can get that for the Enuma Elish. They can get the flood from Epic of Gilgamesh, and they can get Larenzo Reid, whatever they prefer to use. They have a lot of options. They have options because Alexander conquered Egypt. They can become familiar with the history of far as trying to delete nothing from the keys list or something like that.
Well, they did. It wasn't until this a discovery in the last like 50, 60 years that we actually started getting more information on Akhenaten.
Yeah, if we didn't find his tomb, we'd be screwed.
Yeah, we wouldn't know anything about it. Yeah, and that's not even uncommon for them, because they did the same thing to what's her name, Hatshepsut, where they tried to erase her from being that she was a pharaoh, and they tried to erase her from history. But we found her tomb, and then found other writings about her, because they didn't want they didn't want to admit that a woman was pharaoh, and she was a damn good one at the time. Had many, did the country very well. So that's why when people like make these hardcore claims about history, I'm like, look, there's a lot of politics and a lot of not always racism, but tribalism all around a lot of these things that people, for whatever reason, they try to like steal away information. They don't want you to know this, don't want you to know that, erase you from history, and this is why we have to keep an open mind when we're reading and studying everything. Even the things I go over, when I go over something again, I'm having an open mind about it, because, like, you know what? The first time I read it, I could be wrong. The second time I read it, I still could be wrong. And I read it 12 times, and, even though I got the same thing all 12 times, this 13th time, I might be wrong. You just have to be that way.
It happens.
And there's no telling what else we're going to dig up.
I've gone things wrong before. Everybody gets things wrong. If anybody tells you, I never screwed up,
oh, definitely.
People screw up all the time.
I went back and watched some of the videos I did like 5 years ago, and I'm like, damn, I was wrong. It's like, man, my information was shallow on that part. It's just the way it is. You go by what we have today. And you said I go into the spiritual a lot. That's why I go into the like Hermetic stuff all the time, because it's just like, at the end of the day, a lot of crazy stuff happened in the past. But what am I gonna do with it right now? How am I gonna make my life better, my kids' life better, society? How am I gonna make society better? Some of this arguing, I'm like, man, go ahead and argue if you want to. It doesn't serve any purpose. I'm gonna go about my business. Now, I like studying ancient cultures. I like studying ancient history. So I'm still gonna study it. I'm still gonna talk about it. But some of these people get so bent out of shape. There's a dude on YouTube calling me the devil's child. It's like, really? Like, your life is so boring that you gotta follow me around on YouTube just so you can make your little trolly comments. Like, you got some to me, that guy got insecurity, that you got to do that, because I don't follow a Christian around and be like, you're wrong, you're wrong. I'm like, okay, go do what you want to do. It's not going to bother me, at all. My world is not ending because of you, so it's all crazy. But dude, it's getting late, and I already know you and I can sit up here and talk for a long time, and that's not going to happen. Because I got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if I can have a conversation like this. Yeah.
Oh, we certainly will. We'll have to plan one.
You wanna chat later on and talk about it, something like that?
Yeah, let me chat with you Thursday, because tomorrow I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff. I know I'll be late tomorrow. So let me chat with you on Thursday. And we'll plan something out. Now, I know next week I'm talking about the Hermetic laws. Right. So I want everybody who's watching tonight, I'm gonna get this Wi-Fi. I messed up YouTube, but we're gonna get it all right. I'm gonna make sure everything's charged up before I even start the show. Okay. So I appreciate you, Jacob. Hey, for you guys on YouTube, guys on Facebook, and for Blog Talk Radio, Jacob Berman. Is that your name on Facebook?
Yeah, that's my name.
All right.
On Facebook
On Facebook,
and YouTube.
YouTube, go check out Jacob. I watch his videos. I learn a lot from Jacob. A lot of historical things. he brings back the memory of a lot of stuff, but also there's new stuff that I haven't even read before that I hear him talking about. So definitely go check out Jacob Berman's page. That's BERMAN, and subscribe. If you subscribe to me, go subscribe to him as well. All right. So we appreciate you guys. We're gonna say good night. And as I always say, remember you gotta free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Appreciate you, Jacob. Good night. Hey. Messing up YouTube.